When I opened the door to the living room and saw my sister Emily kissing my husband, I didn't scream. I didn't lunge at them with fists flying. I just stood there, quiet, silent, as if I weren't even present. But inside, everything was burning. 10 years of marriage. 2 children. A home built on shared savings. Every vacation meticulously planned. Every day filled with routine, support, care. I thought we were the stable ones, the couple who didn't need drama because we had each other. But it turned out I'd been living in an illusion they'd both carefully maintained, hiding their glances, their texts, and, as I now knew, so much more. "Carolyn," Emily whispered, jerking away as if shocked by a live wire. My husband, David, only looked at me, no remorse, just weariness, as if I'd interrupted them at the worst possible moment. Right then, I understood. I wasn't the woman who forgave anymore. Not the one who stayed silent for the kids. I was the one who would answer back, with the same coin, only slower, deeper, and far more precise. And now, they would both pay. Life before that day had been calm, almost perfect. We lived in a Chicago suburb, in a house with a garden where the kids played until sunset. David worked as a financial advisor. I planned events for a senior nonprofit, a job that, ironically, had taught me patience and how to listen to silence. Emily was my younger sister by 5 years. After our parents died, we were all each other had. She'd always been more impulsive, more vivid, but I loved her. Even when she divorced for the 3rd time, I supported her. Even when she stayed with us for 6 months, I tolerated her chaotic nights and loud music. I believed family was the last thing you held on to when everything else collapsed. Now, it turned out she was the one who'd shattered mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen until dawn, staring into a cup of cold coffee, asking myself not why that hurt too much, but how. How had they hidden it so long? The first suspicions had surfaced 6 months earlier. David grew distant, gave one-word answers, stopped playing morning music, the ritual that used to start our days. And Emily suddenly started visiting, just because. She brought us a new coffee maker, helped pick bathroom tiles. Too much care. Too many coincidences. But I refused to believe it. Because believing meant admitting my life was a lie. Then came that day. I'd come home an hour early, I'd forgotten my office keys. I only meant to grab them and leave. But I heard laughter in the living room. Laughter that sounded too warm, too intimate. I peeked in. They stood by the window. David held Emily at the waist, kissed her neck. Then her lips long, certain, as if it were normal. As if I were the intruder. The next morning, I said nothing. I simply got the kids ready for school, fried eggs, washed the dishes. David, acting as if nothing had happened, sipped coffee and scrolled through the news. Emily had left in the night. I'd heard the front door click shut. When he stepped into the shower, I went into his study. I knew where he kept his backup phone, inside the desk drawer beneath an old project notebook. There were messages. Hundreds of them. Months of texts. They discussed how to handle everything, how to not hurt me too badly, how to keep up appearances. As if I weren't a person, just a prop. I copied it all. Photos, voice notes, bank transfer histories. Emily had been receiving regular gifts from him for over a year, $500 a month, then $1,000, then plane tickets to Mexico. For 2. Yes, they were already building a future together without me. But I decided, as long as I was alive, they wouldn't have one. My first move was to keep up appearances. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't leave. In fact, I became warmer than before. I cooked his favorite meals, asked how his day was, laughed at his jokes. I even bought him a new shirt. He was so surprised he looked flustered. "You seem different today," he said over dinner one night. "I just realized how much I love you," I replied softly. He smiled. And believed me. That's when I knew they thought everything was under control. That I was a fool. That I either didn't know or would forgive them. But my revenge wouldn't come in screams and tears. It would be quieter, colder, and far more just. I started with Emily. She worked at a small contemporary art gallery. Her boss, an older woman named Margaret, was strict but fair. Emily often bragged she'd soon be promoted. Margaret saw her potential. I knew Margaret wouldn't tolerate betrayal. I wrote her an anonymous letter, not about the affair, but about embezzlement. I claimed Emily had been siphoning cash from the register, falsifying sales reports, pocketing a cut from artwork commissions. I attached forged documents that looked convincing. I'd copied her signature from old greeting cards she'd sent us and altered numbers. Everything was easy to verify, and Margaret did. 3 days later, Emily was fired. In disgrace. No references. No severance. A week after that, Margaret reported her to the police, and Emily was called in for questioning. Nothing was proven, but her reputation was ruined forever. I felt no pity. Only satisfaction. David was trickier. He was a respected professional with a license, managing trust funds and retirement accounts for elderly clients. His reputation was everything. I knew his weak spot: fear of audits. Every year, he filed meticulous reports, triple-checked statements, terrified of even minor infractions. But I remembered a mistake he'd made 2 years ago, a small one. Just $3,800. He temporarily transferred it from one client's account to another to cover a gap until next month. He'd returned it, but on paper it looked like a violation. He thought no one had noticed. But I remembered, because that was the same month we'd discussed hiring a tutor for our son, and he'd said, "Wait 1 more month. I'm stretched thin right now." I wrote an anonymous tip to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I detailed the incident: dates, amounts, the client's name, publicly available from a charity auction I'd organized. I even included snippets of our private conversations where he'd admitted to temporary measures, not official records, but enough to trigger an investigation. The audit began 2 weeks later. David paled when he received the notice. He suspected rivals, not me, because in his mind, I was too soft. Meanwhile, I gathered copies of all his passwords. I read his emails, tracked his meetings, learned he'd already been apartment hunting for their new life in Austin with Emily. They laughed about how Carolyn won't survive without us. I printed their messages, showed the kids only the part where they called our son a burden. My son is 14. My daughter is 12. They cried, but not for me. For him. The climax of my revenge came on David's birthday. We hosted a dinner. Invited a few colleagues, some neighbors. I baked pies, decorated the house. I even invited Emily, told her I'd forgiven everything. She looked at me with pity, convinced I was broken. During dinner, I raised a toast. To David, I said, smiling. To honesty. To truth. To the most important lesson he ever taught me. Everyone fell silent. David tensed. That you can't trust even the person sleeping beside you. Silence. Then I stood and turned on the projector. Their messages flashed on the wall, their plans, their money, their words about how to get rid of Carolyn quietly. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just watched their faces. David sank into his chair, ashen. Emily jumped up, tried to unplug the projector, but I'd already uploaded everything to the cloud. The next day, he was fired. No severance. License revoked. Emily couldn't find work. Her reputation was destroyed. She tried suing me for defamation, but had no proof I'd sent the letters. And the birthday video? A private gathering. No legal violation. 6 months have passed. I still live in the same house. The kids are with me. We're starting over. They see a therapist. So do I. But I'm not who I was. David tried to come back. Sent flowers. Letters. Even stood at the door holding photos from our wedding day. I didn't open it. Emily moved to another state. She writes rarely. Her last message begged me to forget it all. But I won't forget. I'm not the type who screams or threatens. I'm the one who quietly signs the papers that erase your future. Who smiles while you destroy yourself. Who knows the most terrifying revenge isn't violence, it's showing the world your true self and stepping aside to watch you fall. Because, in the end, the one who betrays family for passion has already signed up for pain. I just set the delivery date.